what your cat does with its tail when it's truly happy, you've misread it your whole life. Right now, there is a very good chance your cat is sending you a message with its tail, and you are reading it completely backwards. Not because you don't pay attention, not because you don't care, but because almost everything cat owners in America have been taught about tail language was built on a framework designed for dogs and then quietly applied to cats without anyone stopping to ask whether the biology actually matched. It didn't. And that mismatch is silently creating a wall between you and an animal that has been trying to reach you every single day. Here is the behavior that starts this entire problem. You come home from work, your cat trots toward you, tail raised straight up in the air, the very tip curling forward slightly like a tiny hook. You have been told your whole life that a raised tail means confidence, dominance, maybe mild annoyance. So you give your cat a quick scratch behind the ears and move into the kitchen. And your cat watches you walk away from what was, by every measure of feline biology, one of the most emotionally significant greetings they know how to perform. That curled tip was not neutral. That was not just posture. Research published by John Bradshaw and Charlotte Cameron Bowman at the University of Southampton found that the tail-up signal in domestic cats functions as a formal solicitation of social interaction, a greeting behavior that appears almost exclusively between individuals who share a positive affiliative bond. In other words, your cat reserved that signal for you specifically, and the moment you walked away without responding, they received a message back. Not intentional, but received. This is not a small misread. Across a day, across a week, across years of living together, these small disconnects accumulate. Your cat learns what gets a response and what doesn't. They recalibrate, the greetings get shorter, the tail signals become less frequent, and slowly, without either of you making a conscious decision, the conversation between you narrows. That is the invisible damage that bad tail language education causes in millions of American homes, and almost no one in the pet industry is explaining it at this level, because doing so would require admitting that the most widely shared information about cat body language is fundamentally incomplete. So let's talk about what is actually happening inside your cat's nervous system when that tail moves. Because once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at a tail position the same way again. The tail of a domestic cat contains between 19 and 23 vertebrae, depending on the individual animal, wrapped in a dense network of voluntary and involuntary muscle groups. Some tail movements are completely conscious. Your cat decides to raise it, flick it, wrap it. Others are semi-involuntary, meaning they are triggered by the autonomic nervous system in response to emotional states the cat may not even be fully processing consciously. That is the critical piece. When you see certain tail positions, you are not just reading what your cat chose to communicate. You are reading direct readouts from their nervous system. You are seeing their emotional state expressed in real time through biology they cannot fake and do not always control. This is not a performance. This is physiology. The first position that almost every American cat owner misreads is the full upright tail with no curl, held rigid and vertical while the cat is approaching someone or something. The instinct is to read rigidity as tension. In human body language, being stiff usually signals discomfort or aggression. So owners read a straight-up rigid tail and assume their cat is on edge. They back off. They give space. What they are actually seeing is the feline equivalent of walking towards someone with your hand extended for a handshake. Research from the journal Animal Behavior by Cameron Beaumont, Sarah Lowe, and Bradshaw, published in 2002, showed that the tail-up posture in domestic cats correlates with approach behavior and positive social outcomes in over 83% of observed interactions. The rigidity is not tension, it is intention. It is your cat committing fully to the approach. Now here is where the story gets more specific and where the mainstream pet content almost never goes. The tail does not behave as a single unit. Different sections of the tail carry different information simultaneously, and they operate on different neural pathways. The base of the tail connects to spinal motor neurons that are heavily influenced by emotional arousal systems, including the limbic region. The midtail is more under voluntary control, and the tip, that last 2 or 3 inches, is where you find the most unfiltered emotional leakage in the entire body. The tip is hardest for the cat to consciously control, which is why veterinary behaviorists pay disproportionate attention to it. A cat can decide to hold their tail upright. They cannot always decide what the tip does while they're doing it. A gentle, soft quiver of the tail tip Not a sharp flick, not a hard twitch, but a fine, high-frequency tremor that runs through just the last few inches, is one of the most under-recognized signals in domestic cat behavior. Dr. Michael Delgado, a certified applied animal behaviorist and researcher affiliated with the University of California Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, has described this tail tip quiver as appearing predominantly in contexts of positive anticipatory arousal. You see it when a cat is about to be greeted by someone they are bonded with, when they are watching their owner prepare food, when they are approaching a sleeping companion they are comfortable with. The quiver is not anxiety. It is not aggression. It is closer to the physical expression of excitement that the cat cannot fully suppress. Think of it as the tail equivalent of not being able to keep the smile off your face when someone you love walks into a room. That is the biological mechanism behind it, and almost no pet channel in America is telling you to watch for it. But there is a second tail position that creates even more confusion, and it is the one that causes the most damage to the relationship between owners and their cats over time. It is the low, slow sweep. The tail held below the spine line, moving in a wide, unhurried arc from side to side. Owners see this and they panic. They have been told the swishing tail means anger. They have been told to back away immediately. And sometimes that is correct. A hard, rapid side-to-side lash at the tail base is absolutely a signal to give space. But the slow, low sweep is an entirely different signal produced by an entirely different neural pathway, and conflating them is one of the most common mistakes cat owners make. The slow sweep, particularly when it occurs while the cat is lying in a relaxed posture with soft eyes and no postural tension in the shoulders, is what researchers of feline cognition classify as low-level environmental monitoring. The cat is awake but not alarmed, present but not mobilized. Their nervous system is at rest, and the tail is simply moving with the kind of low-frequency, rhythmic motion that often accompanies a parasympathetic state. In plain language, it is closer to contentment than to warning. The confusion between the fast tail lash and the slow tail sweep has led millions of American cat owners to retreat from their cats at exactly the moments their cats were most available for connection. They see the moving tail, they remember what they were told, and they walk away. The cat watches them go. And the cat, who has no way of knowing that their owner was operating on incomplete information, simply absorbs this as one more data point about how this particular human responds to them. This matters because cats are extraordinarily good at learning the behavioral patterns of the people they live with. A study from Stockholm University published in the journal Scientific Reports in 2019 confirmed that domestic cats track human behavioral consistency over time and adjust their own social behavior accordingly. A cat who is repeatedly responded to with retreat will eventually offer fewer approaches. That is not aloofness, that is adaptive learning. They are doing exactly what any intelligent social animal would do when a pattern of signals produces a consistent response. This is where the story of cattail language stops being about body language and starts being about relationship architecture. Every signal your cat sends with their tail is either answered or not answered. Over months and years, those answered and unanswered signals build the actual structure of your bond. Not your intentions, not how much you love them, but the pattern of responses that your cat has experienced and recorded. The tail is not decoration. It is a communication channel that has been active since the first cat domesticated itself around the grain stores of ancient Egypt approximately 10,000 years ago. Your cat came into your home carrying the same channel. The question is whether it is being used or not. In the next chapter, we are going to go deeper because there are 4 specific tail positions that carry what feline behaviorists call composite signals, meaning the base, the midtail, and the tip are all doing different things at the same time, and reading only one section gives you exactly the wrong interpretation. One of those composite signals is almost universally misread as aggression, when it is in fact one of the strongest trust displays your cat is capable of making. If you have ever had a cat that seemed to flip between friendly and defensive without warning, this next section will explain exactly what you are actually seeing and why. There is a cat named Cleo whose owner, a woman named Donna from Portland, Oregon, spent 3 years thinking her cat had a mood disorder. Cleo would approach her confidently, let herself be petted for a few seconds, and then, without any warning Donna could identify, her tail would puff to twice its size, her posture would lock up, and she would bolt under the couch. Dana had been told this was overstimulation. She started keeping petting sessions short. She stopped initiating contact. She accepted that Cleo was just one of those difficult cats. What Dana did not know, and what nobody in 3 years of reading pet blogs had told her, was that she had been misreading the exact moment of transition between two completely different nervous system states, and the tail was showing her the switch every single time with perfect accuracy. Cleo was not unpredictable. Cleo was broadcasting. The problem was the signal was going out on a frequency nobody had taught Dana to receive. The composite signals are where this gets precise. A composite tail signal is any tail position where the base, the midsection, and the tip are not doing the same thing at the same time. They are operating independently, and because each section draws on a different neural source, a composite signal is essentially your cat's nervous system displaying 2 or 3 emotional states simultaneously, which is exactly what happens during any complex social moment. Understanding composite signals is the difference between reading your cat's mood as a single note and reading it as a chord. The first composite that almost every American owner misreads is what feline behaviorists call the question mark configuration. The tail is raised, but instead of curling at just the tip, the entire upper third of the tail curves forward into a shape that genuinely looks like a question mark hanging in the air. The base is high, which owners typically associate with confidence or alertness. The upper curve bends forward, which owners often read as a hook of aggression or a coiled threat. Neither reading is correct. Dr. Sarah Ellis, head of cat advocacy at International Cat Care in the United Kingdom and co-author of the textbook The Trainable Cat, has identified the question mark tail as one of the clearest behavioral markers of play solicitation in the domestic cat. The base being high means the cat is emotionally activated. The curve being forward means they are directing that activation toward engagement, not confrontation. This is a cat that wants to interact with you in a way that feels good to them. They are not asking a question, they are making an offer. And millions of owners respond to it by freezing, by making soothing noises as if the cat needs calming down, or by redirecting the cat to a toy, all of which miss the actual invitation entirely. The second composite is the puffed base with relaxed tip. This one is the signal that created the most damage in Dana's relationship with Cleo. The tail base inflates, the hairs stand up along the lower third of the tail, and the instinctive read is aggression because puffed fur in the animal kingdom almost always means threat display. But here is the mechanism that changes the interpretation entirely. The piloerection, the puffing of the fur at the tail base, is controlled by the sympathetic nervous system, specifically the erector pili muscles attached to the hair follicles, which are triggered involuntarily by a sudden spike in arousal. Any arousal, excitement, fear, and intense pleasure all run through the same sympathetic pathway. The puffing at the base is the hardware giving you a readout of arousal intensity, not arousal type. The tip tells you the type. A puffed base with a whipping, hard-flicking tip means fear or defensive aggression. That is a cat that needs space immediately. But a puffed base with a soft, loose tip that sways gently or droops slightly downward is a cat whose arousal is running high, but whose voluntary nervous system is not mobilized for defense. That cat is not about to scratch you. That cat is in a state of intense stimulation that their body is having trouble regulating. The correct response is not retreat. It is to slow down, reduce the intensity of whatever is happening, and let the arousal level drop without abandoning the interaction. Dana was leaving Cleo at the exact moment Cleo needed a slower, calmer version of connection, not the absence of it. Here is the one that gets misread as aggression so consistently that it causes real breaks in bonds between cats and their owners. And it is the signal that this entire video has been building toward. It is the tail wrap. A cat sitting or standing beside you who slowly brings their tail around and presses it against your leg or foot, sometimes curling it slightly over the top of your shoe, sometimes just letting it rest flat against your ankle. Owners read this as the cat testing their boundaries. Some read it as territorial marking, some read it as the cat being manipulative or clingy in a way that feels faintly demanding. Almost no one reads it for what it actually is. Physical tail contact between cats who are not litter mates or established colony members is extraordinarily rare. Cats do not brush their tails against strangers. They do not press their tails against cats they are neutral about. The tail contains scent glands, yes, but more importantly, It is a body part the cat keeps close to itself in most social contexts, because extending it into direct contact with another being requires the complete absence of defensive tension in the muscles at the tail base. The tail wrap is only physically possible when a cat's entire posterior musculature is relaxed. It is involuntarily impossible to perform that gesture and simultaneously be tense, guarded, or in any kind of defensive state. Dr. Lauren Finca, a researcher in feline welfare science at Nottingham Trent University in the United Kingdom, has described tail contact initiation in cats as one of the most reliable behavioral indicators of a settled, non-anxious social state directed specifically at the individual the cat is touching. This is not boundary testing. This is your cat making contact with their most socially significant body part and choosing to rest it against you. The correct response is not to ignore it, not to look down at it with confusion, not to step away because it tickled. The correct response is to acknowledge it, be still, let it happen. Now let's talk about the signal most owners think they understand but are actually reading at about half the depth the biology supports: the slow tail spiral. This happens most often when a cat is sitting in full view of their owner and feeling completely secure. No tension, no agenda, no immediate want. The tail begins to move in a slow, wide lateral arc that rotates slightly, tracing a loose oval or figure 8 pattern rather than a straight side-to-side swing. This is not a restless movement. It does not come from activation or alertness. Research into resting feline motor patterns from the University of Lincoln School of Life Sciences, published in the journal Applied Animal Behavior Science, found that these low-amplitude rhythmic tail movements during periods of apparent rest appear linked to what the researchers described as a wakeful relaxation state. The cat is conscious, monitoring their environment, and experiencing no significant stress load on their autonomic nervous system. The spiral is the tail equivalent of tapping your fingers on a table while you are sitting comfortably and thinking about nothing in particular. It is the physical signature of a cat whose nervous system is at ease. Most owners walk past this signal entirely. The cat is right there, broadcasting their baseline emotional state in real time, and the owner does not know what they are seeing. Understanding these composite and context-dependent signals completely changes how you read your cat across an ordinary day. Think about what actually happens inside your home between 8 in the morning and 10 at night. Your cat wakes up, stretches, and moves toward the kitchen, with their tail in that rigid, upright position with a slight forward curl at the tip. And now you know that is not neutral posture. That is an affiliative greeting directed at you personally. They sit near you in the afternoon with their tail tracing that slow spiral on the floor. And now you know that is not boredom or restlessness. That is your cat in their most relaxed neurological state, choosing to be in proximity to you while feeling completely safe. They approach you in the evening and press their tail lightly against your ankle. And now you know that is not an accident or a territorial marker. That is physical contact requiring complete muscular relaxation to even perform. 3 signals, 3 moments across a single ordinary day. All of them were there before, none of them were invisible. They were just not being answered. This is the part of the conversation that the pet industry almost never gets to. Not because the science is new. Most of this research has been available for more than a decade, but because most cat content is built around simple, memorable rules. Tail up means happy, tail down means scared, puff tail means run. Simple rules that are easy to share and easy to remember. And simple rules that are wrong often enough to create, across millions of homes and millions of cats, a low-grade, chronic background of missed connection that no one ever diagnoses because no one is looking at the tail signal data with enough resolution to see it. Modern domestic cats living in apartments and houses across America are animals with extraordinarily sophisticated communication systems operating in environments where those systems are chronically partially understood. They adapt, they recalibrate, they learn what works. But what gets lost in that recalibration is the full expressive range of an animal whose emotional life is far more layered than the content you find on most pet channels suggests. In the final chapter, you're going to get the practical framework, a 3-part daily reading protocol called the TRP method, built specifically around the tail signal patterns we have covered here, with exact time windows, specific positions to watch for, and the single most common mistake owners make when they first try to apply this that undermines everything they learned before even getting started. If you have ever felt like you were reading your cat correctly and still getting the wrong results, that mistake is almost certainly the reason why. The TRP method was not built in a laboratory. It was assembled from the existing feline behavior literature and field tested against the single most consistent failure point in how American cat owners try to apply body language knowledge, which is that they learn the signals in isolation and then try to read them in real time as individual data points, one at a time, without any framework for how signals layer, sequence, and change, meaning based on context. That approach almost always produces the same outcome. A confused owner who cannot reconcile what they learned with what they are actually seeing, and a cat who is broadcasting accurately into a room where nobody is receiving. The TRP method solves that problem with a structure so simple it takes less than 90 seconds to run, but so specific that it completely changes what you are actually looking at when you look at your cat's tail. T stands for transition, R stands for resting, P stands for proximity. Each one targets a different window in your cat's daily behavior cycle, and each one requires you to observe a different section of the tail during that window. Used together, across 3 short daily observations of roughly 30 seconds each, they give you a composite picture of your cat's emotional baseline and social state that is more accurate than anything you could learn from a chart or a diagram on a pet website. Start with T, transition. This is the observation window that opens the moment your cat moves from one location or activity to another. They get up from a nap, they walk into the room where you are, they come toward you after you call their name or open a can of food. The tail during transition carries the most honest real-time data of any moment in the day because your cat is not settled, not guarded, and not performing. They are simply moving. What you are watching for during transition is the position of the tail base and the behavior of the tip simultaneously, not one or the other. The base height tells you the level of social motivation behind the movement. Low base means the cat is moving without strong affiliative intent. They are going somewhere, not going to someone. Mid-height base means low-level social readiness. They are open to interaction but not actively seeking it. High base means directed social motivation. This cat is moving toward you because they want contact. Now add the tip. If the high base is paired with a straight or lightly curled tip, that is the greeting signal identified by Bradshaw and Cameron Beaumont. If the high base is paired with a trembling, fine quiver tip, that is the positive anticipatory arousal state described by Dr. Delgado, two entirely different experiences of the same moment, and you only know which one you are in by watching both sections at once. Spend 30 seconds during the first transition of the morning when your cat gets up and moves toward you or toward their food. That one daily observation will tell you more about your cat's emotional state than anything you could glean from a full hour of passive watching later in the day. Move to R, resting. This is the observation window that most owners never think to use because it appears to be the least informative moment. The cat is lying down, not doing anything, seemingly on standby. But the tail during genuine rest is where the most unguarded neurological data lives. When a cat is truly in a low-stress, low-arousal state, the tail relaxes into a position determined entirely by their nervous system baseline, not by social calculation or environmental response. It is the tail's neutral setting. What you are watching for during resting is whether the tail is genuinely still, whether it is moving in that slow, wide spiral pattern described by the University of Lincoln research, or whether it is producing small, irregular twitches at irregular intervals. Complete stillness in a sleeping or deeply resting cat is normal. The slow spiral in a wakeful but unstressed cat is a positive baseline indicator. It tells you their autonomic nervous system is running at low load, which means their chronic stress level is low, which means their living environment is meeting their needs at a fundamental level. The irregular twitch is the signal worth paying close attention to. Small, unpredictable, asymmetric tail movements during apparent rest can indicate that the cat is processing something. A sound outside, a sensory input that registered below the threshold of obvious response, a low-level discomfort they have not surfaced into visible behavior yet. This is how cats in pain often present in the early stages. The body is at rest, but the nervous system is not. If you observe irregular resting tail activity in your cat for more than 3 or 4 consecutive days, it is a data point worth bringing to a veterinarian. not a diagnosis, a data point. The distinction matters because the goal of the TRP method is not to make you a diagnostician. It is to make you a reader of your own specific cat's specific baseline so that you notice when something shifts before it becomes undeniable. Now, P, proximity. This is the observation window that opens specifically when your cat chooses to be near you, not when you pick them up, not when you call them over, but when they make the unilateral decision to close the distance between you and them and remain there. The tail during proximity is where the deepest relational data lives, and it is the window that produces the signals most often misread as neutral, territorial, or demanding. What you are looking for during proximity is whether the tail makes contact with you, and if so, which part of it initiates that contact. A tail that remains near you but does not touch anything is your cat maintaining emotional proximity while keeping their physical boundaries intact. They want to be in your field, not necessarily in your hands. A tail that brushes against you lightly and withdraws is your cat making social contact and checking the response. If you stay still and do not flinch or reach for them immediately, the contact will usually return within 30 to 60 seconds and last longer. A tail that presses against you and remains there is the signal we covered in Chapter 2, the complete muscular relaxation of the tail wrap, which requires a settled nervous system to even execute. Your response to that contact in the first 3 seconds determines whether your cat's nervous system registers it as received or as ignored. You do not need to do anything elaborate. You do not need to reach for them, talk to them, or make a production of it. The research on affiliative tactile reinforcement in cats, covered in work by Dr. Finca and her colleagues, shows that the most effective response to feline-initiated contact is matched stillness, simply not moving away, not redirecting, and allowing the contact to complete on the cat's timeline. That is all. 3 seconds of stillness sends a signal your cat's nervous system registers as acknowledgement at a biological level. Most owners break that contact unconsciously because they immediately want to reciprocate with petting, which is a human social instinct that is often perfectly appropriate, but sometimes interrupts the specific signal loop the cat was trying to close. The mistake that invalidates the entire TRP method, and this is the one almost nobody in the pet world talks about because it requires admitting something uncomfortable, is applying it at the wrong temporal scale. The method is designed to track your individual cat's baseline over days and weeks, not to give you instant readings in individual moments. The single most common way owners misuse this framework is by running one observation session, deciding they now know what their cat's tail means, and treating that conclusion as fixed. They watch the transition window once, they see a mid-height base with a slow tip, they decide that is their cat's greeting, and they stop watching. But the baseline itself changes. It changes with the season, it changes with your schedule. It changes after a vet visit, after a new person enters the home, after a change in food, after a disruption to routine that seemed minor to you but registered as significant to a nervous system calibrated for territorial consistency. A cat living in an apartment in Chicago in January and a cat living in the same apartment in July are experiencing meaningfully different environmental stress loads, and their tail baseline reflects that. The TRP method only works if you run it consistently enough to build a picture of your specific cat's range, not just a single data point, 30 seconds, 3 windows, daily. That is the protocol, not once a week when you think about it, daily. Because the signal is always running. The question is whether you are tuned in. Here is what happens when you actually apply this. You stop seeing your cat as a collection of behavioral quirks you have partially figured out. You start seeing them as an animal with a nervous system that is continuously reporting its state, reliably, honestly, through a channel you can now read. The question mark tail in the evening stops being confusing and starts being an invitation you know exactly how to answer. The resting spiral becomes a confirmation you can look at and know in that moment that your cat feels safe in the place you created for them. The tail pressed against your ankle while you sit on the couch becomes the most unambiguous statement of settled trust in your cat's entire behavioral vocabulary, and you stop missing it. That shift from a home full of signals you are not reading to a home full of signals you are now in conversation with is not a dramatic event. It is a quiet one. But over weeks and months, it is the kind of shift that Dana from Portland said changed her relationship with Cleo entirely. She did not get a different cat. She learned the frequency her cat had always been broadcasting on, There are cats all across America right now, in apartments and houses and families that love them, sending tail signals that are not being received, not because their owners do not care, because nobody explained the mechanism at the level the biology actually operates at. That is what almost nobody in the world of pet content delivers, and now you have it. Drop the word tail in the comments right now if any part of this changed how you see your cat's body language. And if you want to go deeper, the next video covers the 5 facial signals that work alongside the tail to build a complete real-time emotional picture of your cat. The ears, the eyes, the whisker position, the brow, and the one micro-expression almost no owner ever catches that appears for less than 2 seconds and tells you more about how your cat feels about you than almost anything else they do. If the tail is the broadcast tower, the face is the full transmission. That video is coming next. If this gave you something, the single best thing you can do for this channel is subscribe right now. Every subscriber makes it possible to keep going deeper into the science that most cat content never reaches. Your cat deserves an owner who understands what they are actually saying. Subscribing is how you make sure you never miss the next layer,